Alright, so this is index 0 of my JavaScript, just generic language tutorial. I'm going to be teaching in this tutorial how to set up a JavaScript file, how to run it, and how to do some cool stuff. So first off, you need to have some things installed on your computer. And what you can do is you can open up your favorite text editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code right now. And then in Visual Studio Code, you can go to Terminal and click on New Terminal. Or you can just, what I like to do is press the Control key and the backtick. So if I turn on screencast mode, it's these two keys, and if I press those, it'll toggle the terminal. So that's a cool tip to know. So when you have your terminal open, you can type in node-v, and you should get a version. Actually, I'm using the wrong version. 1 second. Alright, so if you type in node-v, you should get a version like this. I'm using 16.6.0. It'll probably be something similar to that. Next, you want to type in npm-v, and let's see. It'll usually take a second. So let's wait. Yeah. So currently my npm is 7.19.1, and then that's basically all you just need. So you need a text editor, you need Node installed, and npm installed. We probably won't be using npm for this tutorial, but it's nice to have. And I'll probably have links in the description on how you can install Node. So first off, open up a folder that is like somewhere on your computer. I have this JavaScript folder opened in VS Code, and then in the terminal I have that folder open as well. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to type in the command touch index.js. Now the touch command in the terminal just basically creates a new file, and you'll see it pop up over here. And what this basically does is creates the index.js file, and in JavaScript, I'm not sure about the other languages. I think JavaScript is the only one that uses this, but index is usually used for the main file of the program. So index.js. It's sort of similar to something like index.html or something. So in this index.js file, we're going to type in console.log and just type in some random message. Usually programmers like to type in hello world. So we're going to type that. And now you'll see that this file has this little white circle over here, and that basically means in Visual Studio Code that this file is unsaved. So any changes you make right here, they are unsaved right now. So what we need to do is press Control S, and that'll go ahead and save the file, and you'll see the white circle disappear, meaning that you saved the file. Now back in your terminal, you're gonna need to type in node index.js, and you'll see hello world pop up. What this command does is, node is sort of like the thing that runs your JavaScript. So typing in node index.js just means that, hey, we want to run this JS file, so look at this file, run it, and print the output to the console. And that's exactly what we get in hello world. So that's basically how you run a Node program. Just type node and the name of the file. Now console.log is a function that takes in what's called a string. So a string is basically just text. In JavaScript, there's not really any static typing. So usually it's just, usually any variable can be any type. But in this case, console.log takes in a string, and a string is just basically text. There are other forms of data, such as, for instance, numbers, strings, and booleans. Now these are the basic types that we'll be using in JavaScript. You might have heard numbers as ints and floats before in other languages, but in JavaScript, especially in TypeScript, there is just numbers. So an int would be an integer and a float would be a just basically a decimal or a fraction, sort of. So, but in JavaScript, they'll just combine into one type that we call a number. So those are the types of variables. But how do we make a variable? So a variable is defined in JavaScript by the keyword let. So let is telling JavaScript that, hey, we want to make a new variable, and then we need to give it a name. Now, a good name might be like variable, right? And one thing to note is that your name can't be separated by spaces. So for instance, let's say I type in variable 1, right? You'll see it gives me an error. It says let 1 any comma expected. So this just means that your variables can't have spaces in between. And what we usually do is we capitalize the first letter of every word, except for the first word. So variable 1 would be like this. But if we type in something like, for example, my variable 1, you'll see that we usually capitalize the first letter of every single word except for the first letter of the entire variable name, right? So we have let, and then we're gonna give it a name. Let's just say variable, and we're gonna set it equal to hello world, for instance, right? And how we set a variable is using the equal sign. And the equal sign just basically says, hey, we're gonna put this value into this variable. Now, what if I might have not explained what this is yet, but a variable, you can think of it, I like to think of it as sort of like a envelope. So an envelope can store information, like for example, a letter or any type of information. And basically, an envelope allows you to store something in it and then retrieve it later. You can also think of it as like a box or something. So you're putting something into the box, and later you're going to be able to retrieve it. Now, how do we retrieve it? It's actually pretty simple. We just go here and we type in variable, right? So this just basically means, hey, take the value of the variable and then console.log it, right? So that's how we get the value of a variable in JavaScript. If we save this now and run the program, you'll see it prints out hello world. And you'll notice I forgot the exclamation point here, so we can see that it's different from the one we printed before. And remember to press Ctrl S to save the file. So now what about the other types? Well, number is a pretty common type. It's basically just a number. So let's say we type in like 100, right? And we save this and we run it again. You'll see that it prints out 100. And what's cool is that in most terminals, when JavaScript prints out a number, it'll actually have it in this yellow text. So you'll see that if it's a string, it'll print it out in gray text. If it's a number, it'll print out in yellow text, right? And the last data type that we're gonna be focusing on is Booleans. Now you can think of Booleans as just true or false. So it's either on or off, true or false, right? If you have true, right, variable is now a Boolean, you can actually see it right here. Let variable Boolean. And we can say console.log variable. And if we do this, it'll say true. And you'll notice that Booleans are also printed out in yellow text. So JavaScript basically separates the numbers and Booleans from the strings by printing out strings in gray text. So now everything is working now, and we can do some more stuff. Right? Oops. Alright, so for instance, if we want to have two variables, we can just have two lets, right? So let's say var1 equals hello. Actually, no, let's do something more simple. Let's do 5, right? And we're going to say let var2 equals 8, right? Now, in JavaScript, you have two variables, var1 and var2. You can add them together by typing var1 plus var2, right? And this is basically is just adding the two numbers, right? So if we go back over here, we can see it says 13. which is exactly 5 plus 8. And you can also do stuff like, you can do stuff like divide, which is 0.625, I'm pretty sure. You can do stuff like minus to get a negative result, -3, and you can also do stuff like times. And you'll notice that times is this star symbol. It's right above the 8 on your keyboard, and that's just times, because if you have an X, then it's not going to do multiplication, it's just going to think you're having another variable. So if we save that, we get 40, right? And then you'll notice something interesting when we have, let's say var1 equals hello, and then var2 equals world, right? So if we have var1 plus var2, you actually see that it says hello world. So numbers can be added together the usual way you would add together numbers, but strings can be added together just by concatenating them. So basically just taking this one and then literally putting this one at the end of it, right? And then the final thing is we're going to talk about in this video is logical operators. So Booleans, we have true and we have false. Whoops. Right? So Booleans are pretty cool because we can do special operators with them. So for instance, if we have var1, we're just going to console log var1 to make sure this works. It says true, right? But what happens when we do var1 and this special symbol var2, right? So what this symbol is it's an OR. I'll write these down here. So this is equal to an OR operator, right? So OR just basically takes in two values, and if either one of them is true, it returns true. If either value is true, it returns true, right? So if you'll see down here, if we run it, it'll print out true, right? But let's say if we change this var1 to a false, you'll see that it prints out false. So if either value is true, it returns true, right? If both of them are true, it'll also return true, since at least one of them is true, as we can see down here, right? There's also another common one, which is called the AND, which is just two ampersands. So double AND signs just means AND, right? If both values are true, it returns true, right? So if we have both the values as true, you can see it'll return true. But if either one of them is false, it'll return false, right? Now the last one we're going to talk about is not. So not is just an exclamation point. And not you can just think of as a flipping operator. So if true, it returns false. If false, it returns true, right? So this is what's called not. If true, returns false. If false, returns true, right? So if we take something like this, 1, right? So right now, var1 is false, right? Down here, you can see that it's false. If we say if not var1, it'll actually become true. So not just takes the value before and it basically just reverses it. It toggles between true and false, right? And this is basically the simple operators for Boolean values, or and a not. And you can do some more research. There's a lot more what these are called. I think it's called, yeah, you can just search up something like binary operators or something and it should show up. There are a lot more of these operators. So I think that'll be the end of this video because it's getting pretty long. It's 15 minutes. So basically what we learned in this video is we'll learn how to console.log stuff. right? So console.log just takes in a variable or anything and it logs it out to the console down here. We learned how to make variables with the let keyword, naming the variables, and the 3 basic data types, which are numbers, strings, and booleans. And I think that's going to be all for this video. As always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.